Somewhere in your garage right now, there's a $400 tent, a $300 sleeping bag, and a drawer full of gadgets that all promise to keep you alive outdoors. Here's the uncomfortable truth. A frontier man walked into the Rocky Mountains with a wool blanket, a belt axe, and a leather bag smaller than your lunchbox, and he stayed out there through winters that hit 40 below for 20 years at a time. No resupply, no rescue, no customer support line. These men weren't tougher than the weather. They were smarter than it. And the tricks they used sound so strange today that most people dismiss them, right up until the moment a lighter dies, a battery freezes, or a tent seam rips at 2 in the morning. Today I'm counting down 20 of those tricks, from the merely clever to the one closely guarded trick that made the sleeping bag itself unnecessary. Number 1 is the one I'd bet most seasoned campers have never even heard of. Let's get into it. Number 20. Wet wool beats dry synthetics. Modern rain jackets make one promise: stay dry. The frontier man knew a better rule: stay warm, even wet. Wool keeps most of its insulating power when it's soaked because the crimped fibers trap air no matter how much water they hold. That's why the Hudson's Bay Company Point blanket was the single most traded item on the frontier. Trappers priced them in beaver pelts and carried them for decades. A soaked puffy jacket, on the other hand, is a wet paper towel. Down clumps flat when wet and loses its loft, and loft is the only thing keeping you warm. The old-timers waded rivers in wool, wrung it out, and kept walking. Try that in your down jacket. Number 19. The oilcloth tarp that embarrassed the tent. A frontier shelter was often nothing but a canvas sheet soaked in oil or wax, pitched as a linta with the open side facing a fire. Sounds miserable. It wasn't, it was engineering. That open front let firelight and heat pour in all night, something no closed tent can do, because one spark lands on modern ripstop nylon and burns a hole through it in seconds. Waxed canvas shrugs off embers, and when it does tear, you fix it with a needle and thread instead of ordering a patch kit. A linta with a fire out front kept men comfortable in weather that would have modern campers shivering inside their sealed nylon coffins, hugging their knees until sunrise. Number 18. The bough bed. Trappers never slept on the ground, ever. They cut spruce and fir boughs and layered them butts down like shingles until the pile was 8 inches deep. That's not a mattress, it's insulation. The cold ground steals heat from your body faster than the air does, and 8 inches of springy boughs full of trapped air blocks that theft cold. Now look at the modern version. A $200 inflatable pad that takes 10 minutes to blow up and goes flat from one thorn. 1. The bough bed can't puncture, costs nothing, and was built in 15 minutes with a belt knife. One of these systems fails at midnight in January. It isn't the pile of branches. Number 17. Fire from a rock when lighters quit. Here's a number the camping store doesn't put on the package. Butane stops turning into gas at 31 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not even a cold night, that's a frosty morning. Your lighter doesn't break in the cold. The fuel inside it simply refuses to work. The frontier man's fire kit was a piece of flint, a steel striker, and a tin of char cloth, cotton scorched black in a closed container until it catches a spark like a magnet catches iron. That system has no moving parts, no fuel to freeze, and it works soaking wet. Shake the water off the flint, wipe the steel on your shirt and strike. Men bet their lives on it at 40 below, every single night for a century. Number 16. Fatwood, the fire starter that grows on trees. Chemical fire cubes cost about $1 a piece and smell like a gas station. The frontier version is called Fatwood, the resin-soaked heart of a dead pine stump, where sticky pitch concentrated as the tree died. Shave off a handful of curls, and they light from a single spark and burn hot even in rain, because pine resin is nature's lighter fluid. Trappers filled a coat pocket at one stump and were set for weeks. It's still sitting in every pine forest in North America, free, while campers pay for shrink-wrapped cubes of wax. Number 15. The heat reflector wall. Watch a modern camper build a fire. Now watch where the heat goes up and out in every direction, warming the entire continent except the person sitting at it. The frontier man stacked green logs into a knee-high wall on the far side of his fire, angled to bounce heat straight into his lean-to. A reflector wall roughly doubles the warmth you receive from the same wood, which means half the chopping for the same heat. It also feeds the fire draft and shields the flames from wind. 4 logs and 10 minutes of work, and it outperforms any battery-powered heater you can buy. Number 14. Bear Grease Boots. Waterproof breathable boots are one of the great marketing triumphs of our time because in deep cold they're neither. The membrane clogs with frozen sweat, the boot turns into a freezer, and toes pay the bill. Frontier men rubbed warm bear grease or tallow into their leather until it drank no more water. Greased leather stays soft in the cold, sheds slush, and here's the strange part, still breathes enough to let sweat escape because it has no plastic membrane to freeze shut. They re-greased by the fire each week, boots propped on a stick, fat sizzling in. A tin of tallow cost nothing. It kept feet on men who had no doctor within 500 miles. Number 13. Loose moccasins in deep winter. Everything in your head says cold feet need tight, padded boots. The frontier ran the exact opposite way. In deep snow, trappers wore oversized moccasins stuffed with loose, dry grass or fur, deliberately loose. Because tight footwear crushes the layer of warm air around your foot and squeezes blood out of your toes, and blood is the heating system. The grass insulated, caught sweat, and got swapped for a dry handful each morning. Fresh insulation, every day from the nearest meadow. Meanwhile, a sweat-soaked boot liner freezes into a solid cast overnight, and there's no spare meadow inside your boot. Number 12. The Possibles Bag. The whole survival kit, flint and steel, char tin, all spare lead cord, a little food, lived in one leather bag on the frontier man's hip, called the Possibles Bag because with it anything was possible. The rule was simple. If you lose everything but the bag, you live. If you lose the bag, you're in trouble. Compare that to a 60-liter backpack so stuffed that its owner couldn't say what's in the bottom of it. The frontier man could empty his bag on a blanket, name every item blindfolded, and repack it in the dark. Survival wasn't about carrying more. It was about knowing exactly what you carry and where it rides. Number 11. Pemmican, the meal that never expires. Freeze-dried camp meals need a stove, boiling water, and 10 minutes, which means in a storm, dinner depends on a working stove. Pemmican needed teeth. Dried lean meat, pounded to powder, mixed half and half with rendered fat, sometimes with dried berries beaten in. 1 pound packs roughly the calories of 3 freeze-dried dinners. It never freezes solid, and batches kept for years without a refrigerator. Fur companies bought it by the ton because entire canoe brigades ran on it. No cooking, no cleanup, no stove to fail. You bite off a piece and keep moving while the storm does its worst. Number 10. 1 tin cup and the coals do the cooking. Titanium cooksets are beautiful. 3 nested pots, a folding stove, a windscreen, a tiny kitchen that needs assembly at 20 below with numb fingers. The frontier kitchen was 1 tin cup and the fire itself. Meat cooked skewered on a green stick. Roots baked buried in the coals. Water boiled right in the cup, set on 2 stones. Fish cooked split open and pinned to a slab of wood propped facing the flames. Every one of those techniques still works, requires nothing, and cannot break. The coals don't care about your gear. They've been the best stove on Earth for 1,000,000 years. Quick pause, I'm about to get to the tricks the old-timers actually argued about keeping quiet, including the one at number 1 that replaced the sleeping bag. If you're enjoying this, subscribe. This channel digs up one lost skill after another every week. Alright, back to the countdown. Number 9. The belt axe that outworks the multi-tool. A modern multi-tool has 17 functions, and in a real winter emergency, you need exactly none of them. You can't split firewood with folding pliers. The frontier man's belt axe, a small tomahawk, about a pound, split kindling, drove stakes, broke ice, quartered game, hammered, dug, and in skilled hands built an entire shelter frame. One tool, one purpose class, real work. The multi-tool wins at fixing eyeglasses. The belt axe wins at staying alive. The old-timers knew which problem they'd actually have. Number 8. Reading tomorrow's weather in the sky. No signal, no forecast, no app. Frontier men read tomorrow in plain sight. A ring around the moon means ice crystals riding a warm front, precipitation inside a day or two, often sooner. Campfire smoke sinking and crawling along the ground means falling pressure, and falling pressure means weather. Birds feeding low and frantic, the wind swinging into the east, each one a page of the same forecast. Men moved camp, banked wood, and doubled shelters on those signs, and they were right often enough to grow old out there. Your phone's forecast is better right up until the moment you lose service, which is exactly when you need it most. Number 7. Rawhide, the repair that tightens itself. Duct tape adhesive stiffens and lets go in deep cold. Ask anyone who's tried taping a repair at 10 below. The frontier fix was rawhide. Soak a strip of untanned hide, wrap the cracked axe handle or the split canoe rib while it's wet, tie it off and walk away. As rawhide dries, it shrinks with brutal force, clamping the joint tighter than any glue, and cold weather only makes it harder. Wheels, saddles, snowshoes, gun stocks, half the frontier was held together with shrunken hide. It's a repair that gets stronger with age. Find me one product in a camping store that promises that. Number 6. Candlelight that outlives your headlamp. An alkaline battery can lose most of its power at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Your 200 lumen headlamp fades right when the night is longest. The frontier answer was tallow. A single rendered fat candle burns for hours, and its flame doesn't dim because it's cold out. Trappers carried candle stubs in the possible's bag, lit them from the fire, and used a tin cup or a bark sleeve as a wind-proof lantern. Dimmer than your headlamp, absolutely. Still burning at 4 in the morning in January, also absolutely. And when the candle ran out, the next batch was rendered from the same animal that made dinner. Number 5. Where you camp matters more than what you camp in. Here's a trick that costs nothing and outperforms $1,000 of gear. Cold air flows downhill at night like water in pools in the valley bottoms, which is exactly where modern campers pitch, next to the pretty creek. On a calm night, that valley floor can run 10 to 15 degrees colder than a bench just 100 feet up the slope. The frontier man camped on that bench above the frost pool below the windy ridge, back to a boulder that soaked up fire heat all evening and gave it back all night. Same storm, same gear, 2 totally different nights, decided before a single stake went in. Number 4. Snow is insulation, not the enemy. Modern campers knock snow off the tent all night, fighting it. Frontier men shoveled it on. Snow is mostly trapped air. Fresh drifts insulate about as well as fiberglass, inch for inch. Banked thick against the walls of a lean-to or brush shelter, it seals out wind and holds body heat in, turning a drafty frame into a den. It's the same physics that keeps a grouse alive diving into a snowbank at 30 below, and the same reason snow country cabins stayed warmer once the drifts buried their walls. The blizzard trying to bury your camp is delivering free insulation. The old-timers accepted the delivery. Number 3. Manage sweat or die dry. The deadliest thing in winter isn't snow, it's your own sweat. Wet clothing steals heat around 25 times faster than dry, so the frontier rule was blunt. You sweat, you die. Watch what the old descriptions show: men stripping off a wool layer the moment hard work began, cutting ice at the collar and cuffs to vent heat, slowing their pace on the climbs, and dressing back up the instant they stopped. They treated clothing like a thermostat, adjusted every few minutes. Modern gear promises fabric will manage the moisture for you. It can't keep up with a working body. No fabric can. The only sweat management system that actually works is paying attention. Number 2. Firewood measured by the night, not the armful. Almost every freezing night in the backcountry follows the same script. The fire dies at 1 in the morning because gathering wood in the dark felt like too much work at 10. The frontier man's rule: gather until you think you have enough, then gather 3 times more and stack it within arm's reach of your bed. Wood was measured in nights, not armfuls. Then the fire was built to burn long, too thick logs laid parallel, flames crawling down the seam between them, burning slow and steady for hours instead of tall and fast for one. A fire you can feed without leaving your blanket is the difference between sleeping and surviving until morning. And number 1, the fire bed, the trick that replaced the sleeping bag. This is the one even most bushcrafters have never tried. On the worst nights, the frontier man burned his fire for 2 hours, not beside his bed but on it. Then he raked the coals away, spread a few inches of dirt over the fire-scorched ground, laid boughs and his blanket on top, and slept on ground that had become a radiator. Stones from the fire, wrapped in cloth and tucked at his feet, held warmth until dawn. The earth under him stayed warm most of the night, heating his body from below, the exact direction every sleeping bag is weakest, because your weight crushes the insulation flat beneath you. One wool blanket on a fire bed beat the cold at 40 below. No zipper, no fill rating, no $400. Just a man who understood that the ground itself could be the warmest gear in camp. So before your next trip, try just one of these. Build the reflector wall, shave a handful of fatwood, camp on the bench instead of the creek bottom. You'll feel the gap close between you and the men who did this for a living, and you'll start looking at that wall of gear in the store a little differently. Not everything they sell is useless, but almost none of it is necessary. The frontier man's real equipment was between his ears, and that model never needs an upgrade. Which of these tricks have you actually tried, and which one do you flat out not believe? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want more of what the old-timers took to the grave, the next video digs into the winter camp systems that kept trappers alive through whole seasons the gear industry says are impossible. Subscribe, and I'll see you out there.